The problem with karma. There's an inevitable moment in the life of any child star when they attempt to shed their family-friendly image in order to prove to the world that they're an adult. We've seen these growing pains manifest in a variety of ways over the years. Some take a break from the public eye and return a few years later with a degree. Some take on more mature projects to force people to take them seriously. Some let loose and become Hollywood's latest wild child. And some just get an edgy new look and call it a day. Transitioning from child to teenager to adult is a stressful process for normal people, so I can't imagine how difficult it is for celebrities. Every single thing they do is put under a microscope, and they're not only role models to thousands of impressionable fans, but they're also responsible for the success of entire brands. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone. Because they've spent most of their youth working and following other people's orders, these rebrands serve as a way for child stars to express themselves for the first time, which sounds great in theory, but in practice, it isn't as simple. Because people are used to seeing them as a child, when they suddenly become an adult, it's disconcerting. And as a result, these rebrands often see a good deal of pushback from the public. If you've been anywhere online this past week, then odds are you've seen the countless jokes, think pieces, and criticisms directed towards the bow-wearing reality TV phenomenon known as Jojo Siwa. Jojo, who's about to turn 21, has recently entered her bad girl era, coinciding with the release of more adult-sounding music and an alternative look. However, this rebrand doesn't seem to be going over very well, with people calling it everything from uninspired to disingenuous to embarrassing. There are a lot of levels to this rebranding attempt that would be difficult to understand without first having an understanding of who Jojo Siwa is. And unless you were a child in the 2010s, odds are you're totally clueless as to why she's such a big deal. So let me fill you in. Back in the early 2010s, everyone was trying to cash in on the reality TV craze that had blossomed the decade prior thanks to shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, The Real Housewives, and The Hills. Reality TV at the time focused on drama and chaos, and as a result, big personalities were prioritized, with a handful of reality TV stars, like Snooki and Honey Boo Boo, even becoming cultural phenomenons. A pattern quickly formed, with more bizarre behavior being rewarded with better viewership. So producers set out to not only create ridiculous scenarios, but also cast people whose personalities would clash. One of the most popular reality TV shows of this era was Dance Moms, which began airing in 2011. While the show's premise was fairly innocent, following a group of children as they prepared for various dance competitions, it was the cast that had America fixated. The dance studio was run by Abby Lee Miller, who would frequently berate the dancers and pit them against each other, causing conflict between her and their parents, which would culminate in passive-aggressive behavior, shouting matches, and even physical altercations. I've only seen a few episodes of the show, but honestly, it was never my cup of tea. Something about all of those kids sobbing while their mothers actively exacerbated the situation for a check and some screen time never sat well with me. Because Dance Moms was such a hit, a spin-off, Abby's Ultimate Dance Competition, was put into production, which pitted a group of dancers against one another to win $100,000 and a scholarship to a ballet academy. Jojo Siwa made an appearance in the second season of this show in 2013, and although 9-year-old Jojo was eliminated early on, she caught the eye of the producers and Abby Lee Miller, and was subsequently brought onto Dance Moms in 2015 in order to replace a recently departed member. Jojo was immediately presented as the odd man out, with her outspoken personality clashing with not only the other students, but the moms as well. While on the show, she was called annoying, untalented, arrogant, and rude, with some of the cast members even going as far as to mock her speech impediment and appearance. A reminder that she was only 11 when she joined the show.
And oh, I got these for free, and I got these for free, and I got these for free.
In spite of this, Jojo remained positive and upbeat on camera, and this resilience made a great impression on viewers. Shortly after, she began posting videos to YouTube, where she quickly grew a following. And in May 2016, she released her first single, Boomerang, which addressed bullying. The song went viral, and thanks to its be the bigger person message, Jojo was quickly proclaimed a role model. Seeing how powerful the Jojo Siwa brand was becoming, Nickelodeon came a-knockin', and after signing with them in 2017, Jojo left Dance Moms in the dust. Nickelodeon immediately set out to make her a star, having her make cameos in various shows, performing at live concert events, and selling an array of branded products. Kids couldn't get enough of her, and Jojo Siwa hair bows could be found on shelves at Claire's, Walmart, Target, and JCPenney. Jojo wasn't your run-of-the-mill celebrity. She was a billion-dollar brand. And as a brand, Jojo didn't have time to be an ordinary kid. She toured the country as a caricature of her 13-year-old self for years. And while her fans were able to grow up and try new things, she didn't have that luxury. She had to be marketable, or else be at risk of losing her empire. In the 2020s, Jojo returned to her reality TV roots, appearing either as a contestant or judge on an array of shows including The Masked Singer, Dancing with the Stars, Special Forces World's Toughest Test, So You Think You Can Dance, and RuPaul's Drag Race. Around the same time, Jojo came out as queer, a revelation which she said she received criticism for. Quote, "I had a lot of corporations tell me that I made the wrong choice and that I shouldn't have come out. They said that I shouldn't tell my young demographic that I'm gay." Nickelodeon seemed to take particular offense to this announcement, excluding her from the 2022 Kids' Choice Awards despite having her as their poster child for the better part of a decade. Since Jojo had been primarily marketed to children, I can understand why this might have caused a stir, but considering she'd spent most of her life dressed like Elton John, were people really that surprised? As child stars get older, they begin to rebel against their pre-existing public persona. For some it's more drastic, for others it's more subtle. Jojo started off by dressing more minimally and chopping off her hair, ensuring that she would no longer need to wear one of her signature side ponies. She also began posting thirst traps, with a few of the videos where she was dressed as Draco Malfoy going viral for their cringiness. She also began swearing publicly, drawing criticism from parents who said that she should be better about setting a positive example. In 2024, Jojo began teasing a new musical era, Karma, one that she proclaimed would prove to the world that she was an adult. This was by no means a new concept, with dozens of other musicians changing their sound and style when transitioning from their teens to their 20s, like Christina Aguilera for Stripped, Rihanna for Good Girl Gone Bad, and Britney Spears for Britney. Many of these projects received polarized responses, being criticized for drifting too far away from their pre-existing sound while simultaneously not taking enough risks. When female artists undergo a mature rebranding, it typically translates into a more provocative image, which can unfortunately backfire as it results in them being sexualized by their audience instead of being taken seriously by them. But there's no denying that the strategy does succeed in making people view them as an adult instead of a child. While promoting her new project, Jojo compared it to Miley Cyrus's 2013 album, Bangers, which was a major turning point in her career, with her controversial behavior at the time fully separating her from her Hannah Montana persona. Considering the overlap between their fan bases, I don't think that was a bad point of reference for Jojo to have. But now that Karma has been released, I can safely say that she missed the mark. The song, which starts off with the lyrics, "I was a bad girl, I did some bad things," comes across like a 13-year-old's idea of rebelliousness and is just way too overproduced. Sure, she says bitch, but she can't commit to saying fuck, making the song solidly PG-13 instead of R-rated. And although I commend her for fully embracing her queer identity in the video, it's incredibly underwhelming visually, in large part because of what she's wearing. Although Jojo had acted as though we were going to see her style change significantly, the loud makeup, rhinestones, glitter, coiffed hair, and bold shoulders are still reminiscent of what she'd worn during her Nickelodeon days. She's maybe showing a bit more skin and her color palette is less saturated, but that's about it. Up until quite recently, Jojo was still bopping around in her pink hair bows and rainbow jackets, and this look feels just as juvenile as those did. Honestly, it reminds me of a kid trying way too hard to upset their parents. Case in point, this episode of Hannah Montana where she dresses up in a faux punk style, or when Lizzie McGuire has a bad girl phase. Jojo's main outfit for Karma seems to take notes from Gene Simmons from the rock band Kiss, a reference I find incredibly odd for someone born in the 21st century. Like, you're 20. Why are you dressed like a 70-year-old man? Nothing about this look is cool or trendy or aspirational, which is what you need if you're trying to appeal to Gen Z instead of Gen Alpha. Now keep in mind that Jojo Siwa is by no means the only kid-friendly star who has changed their image in the last few years. Jenna Ortega, who's only a year older than Jojo, was once the lead of the Disney Channel show Stuck in the Middle and the voice of Princess Isabel in the Elena of Avalor series, but now she's a proper scream queen with invites to the Met Gala. Dove Cameron, Sabrina Carpenter, and Olivia Rodrigo were also Disney darlings who were forced to maintain a wholesome brand image for years. But now they're performing in front of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide in fishnet tights while making sexual innuendos. The reason these rebrands succeeded is because they felt authentic and genuine, with their maturity being a gradual progression that was naturally reflected in their work. Even when it comes to Miley Cyrus, she had already shown an interest in a more grown-up sound and look in 2010's Can't Be Tamed. So when Bangers came around a few years later, it wasn't actually as dramatic a shift as people acted like it was. Most importantly, it felt true to her, even if it seemed a bit strange to her fans at the time. Whereas with JoJo, it still feels like she's a puppet on a string, doing what she's told instead of what she actually wants. Sure, the song says she's a wild child, but apart from her sexuality, which shouldn't be an issue to begin with, there isn't anything that would alienate her pre-existing fanbase. Sure, there are photos of her leaving a sex shop, but with the giant plushie and mile-long receipt, it's so clearly staged that it kind of feels pathetic. Or there's the fact that she has an entire sleeve of stick-on tattoos, showing a complete lack of commitment to the bit. Tweens might think that this direction is edgy and cool, but it doesn't have any longevity or broad appeal. So unless she wants to be acting like she's 13 for the rest of her life, she needs to come up with something else quick. Plenty of artists have had outlandish looks over the years. Look at David Bowie, Boy George, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, or Nicki Minaj. But I don't think that that's the right direction for JoJo as she moves forward. If the Jojo Siwa we'd seen up until this point was really just a character, why wouldn't they take this opportunity to go in the complete opposite direction? Most people already associate her with crazy costumes, bizarre hairstyles, and over-exuberant dance moves, so why not subvert expectations with something toned down and vulnerable? I'm not kidding. Her stint on that Special Forces show, where she's running around with no makeup and cargo pants, is far more appealing than whatever the hell she's doing with Karma. Considering her age, it'd be easy to pin the blame on her management, but after seeing the way JoJo talks about this project, I think she's equally as responsible. But considering she spent more than half of her life as a product, not a person, it's sort of understandable that her aesthetic choices would be utterly devoid of any real creativity. Since her time on Dance Moms, JoJo's personality has received a good deal of criticism. And while I'd argue that everyone's a bit insufferable at that age, it's interesting that the same comments are still being made today. Like many child stars, JoJo was homeschooled, but because she was constantly touring, she spent her adolescence surrounded by either children or grown adults. There wasn't anyone her own age to hang out with, and I really think it shows. Those teenage experiences, from the more simple things like studying for finals and sitting at the lunch table, to the more fun stuff like prom and house parties, are incredibly important for your development. And I'm not surprised to see that without having experienced those things, her social skills can sometimes come across as a bit off. Now, most of her childhood was robbed from her, and she's only 20, so it's possible this is something she'll grow out of as she gains more experience. But what I personally noticed was a lack of humility and awareness on her end, to the point it almost feels disrespectful. In one interview that's currently making the rounds, she proclaimed that she wanted to make a new genre of music called gay pop.
I said it back in the day when I first signed with Columbia. I said I wanted to start a new genre of music, and they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, it's called gay pop."
Went into the Disney Channel building and I sat down with the president of Disney Channel and I said, I want to make history. And that's what this is.
Disregarding the fact that she is by no means the first openly gay person to make pop music, Karma isn't innovative. In fact, it's so generic that it almost feels like AI wrote it. Honestly, if she hadn't acted like this project was the best thing since sliced bread, I don't think she would have received half as much flack. Following the negative reactions to this new project, JoJo has changed her tune, saying that the over-the-top dancing, cringy interviews, and outlandish clothing were all a marketing strategy. But I don't really buy it. Sure, it got people talking about her, but not in a good way. And let's be real, trolling people isn't a great strategy if you're trying to build a fan base. The criticism directed towards JoJo's rebranding also stems from the timing of it all, with some even calling it a cover-up. In February, she and her mother came under fire following an expose by Rolling Stone, which alleged that they had mistreated former members of her dance group XOMG Pop. Made up of kids between the ages of 8 and 14, the article claimed that the Siwas had failed to properly pay the performers and forced them to work in spite of medical conditions. Considering what she experienced firsthand on Dance Moms, it's disappointing to hear that JoJo might be continuing the cycle of abusive behavior, but I can't help but wonder what it means about her team and what she might have gone through in her youth. Jojo also has close ties to other controversial internet personalities, with both Colleen Ballinger and James Charles attending Karma's release party this past week. And you know what they say about birds of a feather. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not a fan of Jojo's bad girl era, but I can also acknowledge that I'm not the target audience, which, let's be honest, are kids. Deep down, I think she's scared, and she'd rather keep doing the same thing forever instead of having to sit down and be honest with herself. It's still working for now, but I hope she realizes that no one stays 13 forever, and someday, all of her fans will have outgrown her. What do you think of Jojo Siwa's rebrand? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!